Long ago, in a quiet town nestled between the vast mountains and major rivers of Tibet, there lived a famed warrior named Kenchin. His swordsmanship was legendary, but so was his fiery temper. Though he had won many battles during his 20 years as a warrior, his anger often clouded his judgment, leading him to make rash decisions. His reputation was not only of a fierce fighter, but also of a man who would not tolerate even the slightest disrespect. His presence commanded fear, but deep inside, what he had really longed for years, was lasting peace. One evening, after a particularly bitter duel, a young but wise friend and fellow warrior spoke to him in confidence. His friend said, "Kenchin, you are strong, but strength is not enough. You cannot win a battle against your own anger. It will consume you before any enemy ever could." That night, Kenchin lay awake in his bedroom, illuminated only by the light of a solitary flickering candle. The words of his friend echoed in his mind repeatedly. He realized he was not at peace, far from it. And so, determined to find answers, he traveled over 300 miles deep into the hill country to meet a revered Zen master who lived in an ancient monastery. The imposing monastery, perched high on a mountain, was a place of remarkable tranquility. Kenchin climbed the stone steps, his heart pounding, but not from exhaustion, from the anticipation of what he might learn. The Zen master, an elderly man with wise eyes and a calm smile, sat cross-legged before him. His presence was magnetic, his demeanor unshaken. The Zen master asked calmly, "A great warrior you may be, Kenchin, but tell me, who is your greatest opponent?" "I have faced many great fighters, but none could defeat me." The master smiles knowingly, pouring tea into a cup and watching the liquid swirl before speaking again. "Your greatest enemy is not another man, Kenchin. It is your own anger. If you do not master it, it will become your master. Left unchecked, anger is a seething poison that gradually seeps into your bones, robbing you of your health, your peace, your relationships, and your spiritual power." The Zen master handed Kenchin the cup of tea, warm and fragrant. Kenchin took a sip, contemplating the words. "Go to the lake each morning for the next 14 days, meditate there. Let the water teach you and minister to you." Kenchin, though skeptical, nods in obedience. He respects the master's wisdom and decides to follow his advice. The next morning, Kenchin made his way to the placid lake, nestled between the mountains. The early morning light danced on the water, causing it to glisten. He climbed into a small wooden boat, gently pushing it away from the shore. As he closed his eyes and breathed deeply, he felt something new: stillness. The wind brushed against his skin, invigorating him, carrying the fresh scent of water and pine. The world felt still, serene. If this wasn't perfection, it felt ever so close to it. All of a sudden, there was a startling jolt. Kenchin's boat rocks violently as something collides with it. His eyes snap open, irritation flickering in them. The spirit of the soldier in him immediately kicks in. His hand instinctively reaches for his sword. He whirls around, expecting to see a careless fisherman or a mischievous child. Who can be so brazen to dare to disturb my peace and quiet? No sooner had he spoken than his expression shifted. His anger faltered. The boat that had struck his was empty. Not a single soul in it. A simple worn vessel floating without direction. It must have drifted downstream with the wind. Kenchin stared intently at the forlorn vessel, his fists unclenched, his heart rate slowed. A deep silence followed, broken only by the gentle lapping of water. Understanding begins to dawn on Kenchin's face. The anger that had erupted so quickly now feels totally misplaced. He actually feels quite foolish. He had been ready to fight, ready to unleash his temper upon another individual. But this time there was no one to blame, only an empty boat, a simple accident. Kenchin exhales, his grip loosening on his sword. He leans back, gazing at the sky. For the first time in years, he laughs. A quiet chuckle at first, then a deep, boisterous belly laugh. He could not remember the last time he laughed with such abandon. If there had been a man inside that boat, I would have unleashed my fury upon him. But now, with no one to blame, I see my anger is of my own making. As Kenchin walks back to the monastery, his demeanor is transformed. The Zen master watches him approach, a knowing smile on his lips. The lake has taught you well. Life is filled with empty boats, Kenchin. People will bump into you, words will sting, events will shake you, and hurts will etch their scars upon your heart. But in truth, it is not others who disturb our peace. It is we who allow ourselves to be disturbed by the actions of others. Kenchin listens to the wisdom of the old Zen master, bowing deeply, demonstrating true respect in his eyes. He finally understands. Days later, Kenchin is back at the placid lake. He sits, meditating once more in his boat. Almost out of nowhere, another boat drifts towards him, gently bumping into his own. But this time he does not react. He smiles, looking at the horizon, the sun rising on a brand new day. From that day forward, Kenchin no longer let external events control his emotions. He had learned 3 important lessons. 1. He was the captain of his own boat. He was responsible for his boat and must guard its direction at all times. 2. True peace comes not from avoiding disruptions, but from mastering one's mind in the face of these interruptions. Such peace cannot be shaken by external forces. 3. Life's disturbances are inevitable, and they are many, but lasting peace and success come from having solid inner strength, self-love, and a sound mind. It is the responsibility of each individual to protect his or her peace, to guard it with one's life, and to live as if one's life depends on it, because it does. Tell us what you think of this short, inspiring story about the need to practice self-control and anger management. How do you manage your anger, even if you feel it is justified? What do you do to protect your inner peace? We would love to hear from you in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe.